Good evening, listeners. Welcome to Noir Intellect. I'm your host, Victor Blackwood. If you enjoy mysteries, hidden clues, and uncovering the truth, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Leave it in the comments below. Now, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. The mystery begins now. Chapter 1. The celebration ends. The holiday ended for us at 5:17 on a cold Thursday afternoon, though no one had invited us to it. The telephone rang, while Nero Wolfe was considering whether a third bottle of beer would improve his opinion of mankind. I answered, and heard a man breathing as if he had climbed stairs in formal clothes. "Mr. Goodwin, this is Harold Mercer. I must speak with Nero Wolfe." "You are speaking with the department that decides whether you do." "I have no time for jokes. That puts you in a minority." I covered the mouthpiece. Harold Mercer, businessman, country estate, impatient voice. Wolfe wiggled one finger. Impatience did not qualify a man for his attention. I returned to the telephone. "Mr. Wolfe is engaged. Tell him a celebration is ending early, and someone intends that I should end with it." That was better, Mercer said. He had discovered something during a holiday gathering at his estate. Several people under his roof had reason to fear him, and he wanted to see Wolfe the next morning. He refused to name the danger or the people. "An ending reveals more than a beginning," he said. Wolfe frowned as though Mercer had borrowed one of his own sentences without permission. "Tell him 11:15. Before hanging up, Mercer added, "If I fail to come, remember that the celebration ended at 8:20. I wrote the time on my pad. "Dramatic," I said. "Vague," Wolfe replied. At 7:40 the next morning, Inspector Kramer telephoned. "Harold Mercer is dead." The party ended early. Mercer ordered everyone out at 8:20, and they left in small groups. One man left immediately after a private talk with him. Daniel Brooks, his investment partner. Wolfe came to the office before his morning visit to the orchids, wearing a yellow shirt and a scowl. "When did Mercer die?" he asked. "Between 10 and 2, Kramer said. "Maybe poison, maybe his heart. No wound. Your name and 11:15 are on his desk pad." Wolfe looked at me. "Archie, go." At 8:30 I was headed north in the roadster. The city gave way to bare trees, stone walls and houses with enough land to avoid knowing their neighbors. Mercer House stood at the end of a curving drive, broad, brick, and decorated with colored holiday lights that looked embarrassed by daylight. Kramer met me in the hall. Pine branches ran along the staircase. Red ribbons hung over the doors. A tall tree stood in the drawing room, surrounded by abandoned glasses and folded napkins. The study was down a paneled corridor. Harold Mercer sat behind a walnut desk. He was around 60 thick through the shoulders, with iron-gray hair and a face that had probably persuaded many men to accept bad terms. His head rested against the leather chair. One hand lay open beside a broken pencil. A glass of mineral waters stood near a silver tray. There was no wound and no sign of struggle. The study had a second door leading to a conservatory. Beyond the plants, glass doors opened onto a terrace. Both bolts were fastened from inside. On Mercer's desk pad beneath Wolfe's name, 4 initials had been written: DBSK NBAM. The B in Daniel Brooks was underlined twice. Kramer showed me a torn envelope from the wastebasket. The letter was missing, but Mercer had written on the back, "End it before 9. Speak to DB alone." "Who sent it?" I asked. That is one of the questions. Nora Bell, Mercer's private secretary, had found the body at 7. She had stayed overnight, because she was scheduled to work with him that morning. The housekeeper and 2 servants had also remained. Everyone else had left after Mercer's announcement. The guests were assembled in the drawing room. Daniel Brooks stood by the fireplace, lean and controlled, with dark hair going silver at the temples. He had been Mercer's investment partner for 14 years. Samuel Kent was Mercer's attorney. Andrew Mercer, the dead man's son, had recently been threatened with removal from the family business. Clara Wynne was Mercer's widowed sister. Evelyn Ross managed a foundation he supported. Nora Bell sat straight on a sofa, pale but composed. Kramer began with Brooks. What did Mercer say during your private talk? He accused me of mishandling an investment fund. Did you? No. How long were you alone? 5 minutes. Witnesses say 15. They are mistaken. Why did you leave so quickly? Harold ended the gathering. Everyone else waited. You were gone almost immediately. Brooks looked at me. Are you police? Only when it improves the conversation. Harold said he had proof someone had betrayed him. Brooks continued. He refused to show me. Then he told me to leave. Did he threaten you? I asked. He said, by morning, one partnership will be over. Which partnership? He did not say. That was the sort of answer a man gives when the obvious meaning is uncomfortable. Brooks claimed he left at 8:27 because snow had begun. The sky had been clear at that hour. Samuel Kent said Mercer had asked him to stay after the others, then changed his mind. He refused to explain what agreement Mercer wanted revised. Nora Bell remembered a telephone call at 7:50. Afterward, Mercer became nervous, checked the hall clock twice, and asked whether the side drive was clear. Was he expecting someone? I asked. He said no. Which means yes, in Mr. Mercer's case, usually. At 8:10, a servant found a white envelope on a table in the front hall and delivered it to Mercer. No one saw who placed it there. 10 minutes later, Mercer entered the drawing room and said, "The evening is over. I ask you all to leave." Brooks followed him to the study at 8:23. He came out at 8:38 and left through the front entrance. That was 11 minutes later than his own account. Kent entered the study next, but stayed only 2 minutes. Evelyn Ross and Clara Wynne left together at 8:50. Andrew Mercer left at 9:05 after another argument with his father. Kent departed at 9:12. Nora Bell remained. She saw Mercer alive at 10 when she brought him a file. At 10:15 he sent her to the east guest room. Who brought the water? I asked. The housekeeper usually did. Martha Cole denied it. Before dinner, she had placed a sealed bottle and clean glass on the study tray. Mercer normally opened the bottle himself. I returned to the study. The empty bottle stood on a shelf behind the desk. On the carpet near the conservatory door was a narrow crescent of damp earth. Kramer said, "The conservatory has plants. The stone floor is dry. Near the fountain I found a bent gold paper star, the kind scattered across the drawing room tables. Someone had carried it into the conservatory on a shoe. I called Wolfe. I described the telephone call, the envelope, the announcement, and the departures. I told him Brooks had lied about the time he left, that Mercer had expected someone, and that dirt and a paper star had been found near the terrace doors. Who left first? Wolfe asked. Brooks. No. Who began the leaving? That sounds like the same question. It is not. Mercer ended the gathering. Someone caused him to do so. Determine who supplied the cause. The caller or the person who left the envelope? Possibly the same person. I mentioned Mercer's threat to end a partnership. Did he name the partnership? No, then Mr. Brooks supplied the interpretation himself. What about the death? First, establish the true ending of the celebration. It ended at 8:20. Phewie. That was the announcement. The celebration ended when the last guest ceased behaving as a guest. He hung up. In the hall, I examined the coat rack. A torn strip of dark blue wool clung to a brass hook near the service passage. Daniel Brooks had worn a dark blue overcoat. I found him with Kramer in the library. You said you left at 8:27, I told him. Yes. The doorman recorded 8:38. His clock was wrong. The hall clock and telephone log agree with him. I held up the blue thread in an envelope. This was caught near the service passage, not the front door. Did you leave by one route and return by another? No. Did you enter the conservatory? No. Did Mercer show you the white envelope message? No. Kramer moved closer. You are collecting no at a dangerous rate. Brooks looked at both of us. I left after Harold threatened me. That is all. Not quite, I said. You knew the celebration had to end before 9. His face changed. Only for a second, but Kramer saw it too. What did the note say? Kramer demanded. Brooks recovered. I never saw it. The telephone rang in the hall. Nora Bell answered and called Kramer. He returned with his mouth set. Poison, he said. A fast-acting heart drug in the mineral water. Mercer was murdered. Brooks sat down. I looked at the holiday tree and the abandoned glasses. The gathering had been planned to last until midnight. Instead, one message ended it at 8:20. One guest lied about leaving, and the host died behind a closed study door. When I called Wolfe again, he listened without interruption. So, I finished. The celebration ended early, and Mercer ended permanently. No, Archie. Mr. Mercer's death was prepared before the guests departed. Find the person who needed the house emptied. And Brooks? He left first because he had been warned first, accused first, or frightened first. Do not confuse sequence with guilt. What should I look for? The final departure. Brooks was first. I said final. He disconnected. I stood with the receiver in my hand and watched Daniel Brooks through the library doorway. Outside, the winter wind shook the colored lights along the porch. Mercer had told us that endings revealed more than beginnings. Before the day was over, I intended to learn which guest had truly left last. Chapter 2. Guest. A country house after a murder is like a theater after the audience has gone home. The decorations remain, the chairs still face the performance, and every empty glass seems to remember more than the people who used it. At Mercer House, the holiday tree continued to blink red, gold, and green, while Inspector Kramer arranged the survivors in separate rooms. He believed witnesses became more truthful when deprived of one another's assistance. Experience suggested they merely became more inventive. The laboratory had confirmed poison in Harold Mercer's mineral water. The substance was digitalis, concentrated enough to stop a heart already carrying 60 years of business dinners and bad temper. The sealed bottle had not been sealed when Mercer opened it. Someone had carefully lifted the cap, introduced the poison, and pressed it back into place. That required preparation. It also meant the murder had begun before the celebration ended. Kramer gave me the dining room. I took a chair at the long table, opened my notebook, and began inviting guests one at a time. Samuel Kent came first. He was Mercer's attorney, a narrow man of 58, with silver hair and the habit of considering every question a contract offered on unfavorable terms. Dinner began at 6:30, he said. It ended around 7:45. Who left the table first? Mrs. Wynne. She said the room was too warm. Did she leave the house? No. She went to the drawing room. Who followed? Miss Ross and Andrew Mercer. Coffee was served there. What about Daniel Brooks? He remained with Harold for several minutes. Discussing business. They were always discussing business. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Kent said Mercer joined the others at 8, accepted a cup of coffee, and barely touched it. He was distracted and kept looking toward the entrance hall. At 8:10, a servant brought him the white envelope. What did Mercer do after reading it? He folded the paper twice and put it in his pocket. Did he appear frightened? Harold did not display fear. Then what did he display? Anger. According to Kent, Mercer crossed the drawing room and spoke quietly to Daniel Brooks. Brooks followed him into the study. At 8:20, Mercer returned alone and announced that the celebration was ending. But Brooks was still in the study, I asked. Yes. So Mercer ordered everyone out while Brooks remained behind. Kent nodded. That was unusual. Did anyone leave immediately? Not immediately. We were surprised, Mrs. Wynne wanted to know whether Harold was ill. Andrew demanded an explanation. Harold said there was none. Kent went to collect his coat at 8:30. While he was in the front hall, Brooks emerged from the study. How did he look? Disturbed? Angry? More than angry? Shaken? Did he speak to you? No. He took his coat and left. By the front door? I assumed so. Assumptions were becoming popular at Mercer House. Kent returned to the drawing room because Mercer had asked him earlier to remain for legal business. After Brooks left, however, Kent changed his mind. Why? Harold withdrew the request. When, at 8:40, he told me the documents could wait. What documents? A partnership dissolution agreement. Whose partnership? Kent examined me. Attorney and client privilege. Your client is dead, and the other partner may have poisoned him. That does not automatically dissolve privilege. It may dissolve the partnership. Kent's mouth tightened. He refused to name it. Clara Wynne came next. Mercer's widowed sister was 60, handsome, and wrapped in the kind of black dress that turns mourning into an advance arrangement. She had planned to stay overnight. She changed her mind after seeing Brooks leave. Why? I asked. Daniel looked frightened. Did that frighten you? It warned me. About what? My brother never ended an evening early. Harold believed schedules were a test of character. Once he set one, he followed it even if the house caught fire. What did Brooks do? He came from the study, took his coat, and went out without looking at anyone. Did he say goodbye? No, to Mercer. I heard his voice from the study before he left. He said, "You will regret this." Mercer's answer? I could not hear it. Mrs. Wynne told Evelyn Ross she intended to leave. Miss Ross had originally arranged to stay until 11, but offered to accompany her because the roads were dark. So Brooks left first, I said. And you left because he did. Not because he left. Because of the way he left. That distinction was beginning to matter. Evelyn Ross confirmed it. She was 40, dark-haired and brisk. She managed the Mercer Foundation and had learned to discuss charitable money without sounding charitable. I saw Daniel's hands, she said. What about them? They were trembling when he buttoned his coat. Cold. He had not reached the door. Did he carry anything? A folded paper. Which hand? His left. Was it the message from the white envelope? I could not see. She and Clara Wynne departed at 8:50. Evelyn had intended to remain for a discussion with Mercer concerning the Foundation's annual budget. You abandoned it because Brooks looked nervous? Because Harold had dismissed the evening. Daniel fled without expecting, and Andrew was shouting in the hall. I saw no reason to stay. Did Mercer drink mineral water in the drawing room? No. There was wine, coffee, and brandy. Where was the poisoned bottle? In his study, I suppose. That meant the killer either prepared it before dinner or entered the study later. Andrew Mercer arrived carrying enough resentment for 2 men. He was 32, broad-shouldered, and had inherited his father's jaw without inheriting his control over it. I left at 9:05, he said. That is in the doorman's record. There was no doorman. This is a private house. The chauffeur saw me. The chauffeur saw your car leave. Were you driving? Andrew stared at me. Yes. What did you argue about? My father planned to remove me from the company. Why? He said I was irresponsible. Were you? That has nothing to do with murder. It has a lot to do with inheritance. Andrew had planned to spend the night. After Mercer ended the party, he went upstairs to pack. On the way down, he heard Daniel Brooks's car leaving the drive. That changed his own plans. How? I decided there was no reason to keep trying to speak with my father. Daniel was the only man he listened to. If Daniel had been thrown out, I had no chance. Did you enter the study at 8:55? Mercer was alive? Yes. What was he doing? Standing near the desk with a paper in his hand? What paper? I don't know. Was the mineral water open? The bottle was on the tray. I did not notice whether it was open. What did he say? He told me to leave before I said something I would regret. So you did. I said several things first. That made him the 4th person whose departure had changed because Brooks left. When Nora Bell entered, she looked tired enough to be honest, but not tired enough to guarantee it. She had handled Mercer's household correspondence and personal calendar. During the confusion of the previous morning, I had understood her to be his only secretary. She corrected me. Linda Carter was Mr. Mercer's executive secretary, she said. I managed the estate office and his private appointments. Where is Miss Carter? Inspector Kramer sent a car for her. She left before dinner and returned later. That was a new piece. When did Linda leave? Around 6. Mr. Mercer told her to take several documents to the city office. Did she return during the gathering? At 8:15. Before Mercer ended it? Yes, she entered through the side hall. Did anyone see her? I did, so did Mr. Brooks. Linda Carter arrived 10 minutes later. She was 35, neat, capable, and wore a dark green suit that had survived a police car without surrendering its shape. She sat across from me and placed her gloves on the table. You saw Brooks before he left, I asked. Yes, tell me exactly. I returned at 8:15 with a locked document case. Mercer had instructed me to take it to his city office, leave certain files in the safe, and bring the case back empty. Was it empty? Yes. Who knew what you carried? Mr. Mercer and I. Brooks. He saw the case when I returned. What happened? Mr. Mercer met me in the side hall. I told him the task was complete. He asked whether I had been followed. That was worth underlining. What did you say? No. Then Daniel Brooks came through the passage from the drawing room. Mr. Mercer told me to wait in the estate office. Could you hear them? Not clearly. Their voices rose once. Mr. Brooks said, You gave me your word, Mr. Mercer replied. You made the word worthless. Then they entered the study? Yes. What did Brooks look like when he emerged? Nervous. More than nervous. His face was grey, and he nearly dropped his gloves. Did he say goodbye? Only to Mr. Mercer. From the doorway he said, This is your last chance. Then he left. Did he use the front entrance? Linda hesitated. I heard the front door open. I did not see him cross the hall. Could he have gone into the service passage? Yes. That fit the dark blue thread found near the brass hook. I asked about the departure sequence. Linda had prepared cars for several guests. Mrs. Wiz and Evelyn Ross had not requested a car until after Brooks left. Andrew had earlier told the chauffeur he would stay overnight. Kent had planned to remain for legal work. All changed their plans between 8:38 and 9:12. Because Mercer ended the gathering, I asked. Partly, but no one moved quickly until Mr. Brooks left. Why? Linda folded her hands. Daniel Brooks was the person closest to Mr. Mercer in business. If Harold had dismissed him, the rest knew the evening was truly finished. The order was now clear. Brooks left at 8:38. Clara Wynne and Evelyn Ross departed at 8:50. Andrew Mercer drove away at 9:05. Samuel Kent left at 9:12. The announcement had occurred at 8:20, but the guests had not treated it as final until Brooks appeared shaken and left without explanation. I found Kramer in the study and gave him the sequence. So Brooks started the stampede, he said. He was the signal. Signal for what? That the celebration was actually over. Kramer grunted. Wolfe said to find the final departure. He says many things before lunch. I telephoned the brownstone. Wolfe had finished with the orchids and was in the office. I reported the interviews, Linda Carter's return, the locked document case, and the change in everyone's plans after Brooks left. Who was scheduled to leave first? Wolfe asked. Linda Carter left before dinner, but she came back. Among the guests, Evelyn Ross had planned to go around 11. Everyone else expected to remain longer. That was not my question. No one was scheduled to leave at 8:38, yet Mr. Brooks did. Yes. Therefore his departure was not merely early. It was created. By Mercer's accusation. Possibly. What did Brooks carry? A folded paper. The message from the white envelope? Maybe. Find it. Kramer has searched him, Mr. Brooks is not currently at the estate. What? Kramer overheard and came closer. Wolfe continued. Saul telephoned. Mr. Brooks did not return to his apartment last night. His office has not seen him today. I covered the receiver and told Kramer. He used language inappropriate for a holiday house. Do you think Brooks ran? I asked Wolfe. I think he left Mercer House first because someone required him to. Mercer required him to. No, Mercer told everyone to leave. Only Brooks obeyed promptly. Because he had just been threatened or warned. I looked through the study door toward the front hall. What do you want next? Trace Mr. Brooks's route after 8:38. Not where his automobile went. Where he went. His chauffeur drove him. Did he? I checked with Kramer. He called the garage. The chauffeur had brought Brooks's car to the entrance at 8:35, but Brooks dismissed him and drove away alone. Wolfe heard that. "Find the car," he said. "You are now interested in who left first. I am interested in why the first departure controlled all the others. The final departure revealed the opportunity. The first departure may reveal the design. You changed ends." "No, I discovered they are attached." He hung up. At 3:20, a state trooper found Daniel Brooks's sedan at a railway station, 12 miles from Mercer House. The keys were under the driver's seat. The station clerk remembered seeing the car arrive around 9:15, but he had not seen the driver board a train. On the passenger side floor was a crumpled sheet of paper. Kramer and I reached the station before 4. The message had been written in block letters. "Leave first. Drive to the station. Wait by the east platform. Come alone if you want the proof." There was no signature. At the bottom, Harold Mercer's initials had been imitated badly. Daniel Brooks had not fled after murdering his partner. Someone had ordered him away from the estate before Mercer died. The celebration had ended in stages, but the first departure had been arranged in advance, and Daniel Brooks had vanished at the end of it. Chapter 3. The Final Conversation. By the time I returned to West 35th Street, the holiday murder had acquired 3 clocks, 4 versions of the same argument, and 1 missing investment partner. Wolfe was at lunch. Fritz had prepared roast duck with chestnut stuffing, a dish requiring concentration and protection from police telephones. I waited in the office until Wolfe entered at 2:15, settled behind his desk, and pressed the bell for beer. "Daniel Brooks's car was found at the railway station," I reported. The message inside ordered him to leave Mercer House first, drive to the east platform, and come alone if he wanted proof. Mercer's initials were forged. "You have already told me. I was establishing the atmosphere. You are not employed for atmosphere." The doorbell rang before I could defend my position. Saul Panzer came in, carrying a thin briefcase. He took the yellow chair and opened it without wasting time. "Harold Mercer and Daniel Brooks became partners 18 years ago," Saul said. "They began with commercial properties, moved into manufacturing, and later organized the Mercer-Brooks Investment Company. Mercer supplied most of the capital. Brooks managed daily operations." "Successful?" Wolfe asked. "Very. Until 6 months ago." Saul placed several copied statements on Wolfe's desk. "Money began disappearing from 3 company accounts. Not in large transfers. Smaller amounts moved through consulting payments, repair contracts, insurance adjustments, and temporary loans." "How much?" I asked. "Just over $700,000. I whistled. Wolfe frowned at me. "You are not a kettle," Saul continued. "Every transfer carried Daniel Brooks's authorization code. That gives him a motive to leave the country," I said. "Except he did not receive the money. It moved through 2 holding companies and vanished into accounts I have not traced yet." "Could someone else use his code?" Wolfe asked. "Mercer could. Linda Carter knew the filing system. Samuel Kent had access to some corporate records. 2 senior accountants might also have copied it. So the evidence against Brooks was substantial but not exclusive," Wolfe said. "Right. Mercer discovered the losses 3 weeks ago. He and Brooks argued twice at the city office. The second argument was loud enough to bring Linda Carter from the next room. What was said? Mercer accused Brooks of theft. Brooks accused Mercer of arranging the transfers himself." Wolfe looked at me. "The quarrel at the celebration was not new." "No. It was the final round. Do not use that word carelessly. We do not yet know which conversation was final." Saul had found one more item. On the afternoon before the gathering, Mercer instructed his bank to prepare complete records of the disputed accounts. The records were to be delivered to Mercer House the following morning. Mercer had expected to confront someone with proof. That someone had made sure morning came too late. At 3:10, the telephone rang. Kramer had found Daniel Brooks. A truck driver had seen a man walking along the county road shortly after dawn. Brooks had rented a room at a small inn under a false name which showed poor judgment but not criminal genius. State police had taken him into custody. Kramer wanted me at the estate. Wolfe gave permission with the enthusiasm of a king releasing a tax collector. Determine exactly what Mercer and Brooks said to one another, he instructed. Kramer will ask that. Inspector Kramer asks questions to obtain admissions. You will ask them to discover why the murderer arranged the conversation. You have already decided it was arranged? The missing money, forged message, early departure, and altered schedule are not independent accidents. What about the poison? The poison was merely the final instrument. This murder began before Mercer drank. I drove north. Snow had begun falling in thin, dry flakes. Mercer House appeared through the bare trees with its holiday lights shining against the grey afternoon. The celebration decorations had become evidence, but no one had told them. Kramer had Brooks in the library. He looked as though the missing night had used him roughly. His clothes were wrinkled, his jaw needed a razor, and a bruise darkened his left temple. Kramer stood over him. You received a message ordering you to the station, Kramer said. Why didn't you show it to anyone? I showed it to Harold. That was new. When? I asked. During our private conversation. What did he say? Brooks looked at me. He said the note was not from him. Yet you obeyed it. He told me to. Kramer's cigar stopped moving. Start again, he said. Brooks began with dinner. Mercer had been cold and distracted throughout the meal. When coffee was served, he asked Brooks to join him in the library alcove. They discussed company accounts for several minutes. He accused me of authorizing false payments, Brooks said. I told him his own office had processed them. Linda Carter's office, I asked. Possibly. Harold controlled special transfers personally. Witnesses saw you arguing. We were arguing. What happened next? Brooks had received the forged message before dinner. He found it folded inside the pocket of his overcoat when he arrived. At first, he assumed Mercer had placed it there through a servant. During the library argument, he showed it to him. Harold read it twice, Brooks said. Then he asked who knew about the missing money. What did you answer? Linda knew we were examining the accounts. Kent knew there was a dispute. Andrew had overheard part of an argument. Beyond that, I didn't know. Mercer took Brooks into a small morning room beside the study. The room had no entrance from the main corridor, which explained why witnesses saw them disappear. There, Mercer showed him copies of 6 transfers bearing Brooks's authorization code. The signatures were mine, Brooks said, but I had not signed those documents. Forged, Kramer asked. Copied. Someone had lifted my signature from other papers. What did Mercer believe? At first, that I was lying. What changed his mind? One payment was dated a day when I was in Chicago. Harold knew it. He had been there with me. That had troubled Mercer. For the first time, he considered that someone was using the quarrel to separate them. What did he tell you to do? I asked. To follow the message. Kramer's voice rose. He told you to walk into a trap. He said whoever wrote it expected me to leave secretly. If I refused, the person might disappear. He wanted me to go to the station and see who approached. Without the police. Harold did not trust the police with business matters. That sounded foolish enough to be authentic. Mercer left Brooks in the morning room and returned to the drawing room. At 8:20, he ended the celebration. That preserved the timeline already established. Mercer made the announcement while Brooks remained out of sight. You did not leave 10 minutes later, I said. You remained until 8:38. Brooks nodded. I waited for the others to begin collecting their coats. Harold said, my departure had to look angry and immediate. So the argument and your exit were partly staged. The argument was real. The exit was arranged. That explained why Brooks had said, you will regret this, loudly enough for Clara Wynne to hear. Mercer and Brooks had performed the end of their partnership for an unknown observer. What was your last conversation? I asked. Brooks rubbed the bruise on his temple. At the study doorway, Harold gave me the forged note back and said, "Go where you were instructed. If someone approaches, learn the name and return at once." "What did you say?" I told him he was taking a dangerous chance. His answer, he said, "The danger arrived before the guests did." That was a sentence Wolfe would enjoy. Brooks drove to the station, parked near the east platform, and waited. At 9:40, a man in a railway coat approached from the baggage room. "Did you see his face?" Kramer asked. "No." His cap was low. He asked whether I had brought Mercer's account book. "What account book?" "I didn't know." "What did you say?" I told him to remove the cap. The man struck him with something hard. Brooks remembered falling beside a baggage cart. When he recovered, the platform was empty and his wallet was gone. "Why didn't you call the police?" Kramer demanded. I returned to the car and heard on the radio that Harold had been found dead. I knew how it would look. "So you ran?" I panicked. An experienced businessman hides at an inn under a false name because he panics? Brooks met his eyes. An experienced businessman recognizes when someone has arranged evidence against him. That was fair, though not flattering. I left Kramer with Brooks and went hunting for the sequence of the conversation. Linda Carter was in the estate office. She confirmed that Mercer and Brooks first argued in the library, then entered the morning room. She saw Mercer emerge alone at 8:19. "He looked troubled," she said. "Angry?" "No. He looked as though he had discovered the wrong answer." Then he announced the celebration was ending. "Yes." "Did you see Brooks afterward?" "At 8:36. He came from the morning room and paused at the study door." "Could you hear them?" "Only part of it." "What part?" Mr. Brooks said. "If this fails, we both lose, Mr." Mercer answered. "If it succeeds, one of us learns the truth." "Did Mercer give him anything?" "A folded paper, the forged message." Nora Bell had seen the same exchange from the main hall. Samuel Kent had heard the raised farewell, but not the quieter words before it. Clara Wynne saw only Brooks's nervous exit. The witnesses had not lied about the conversation. They had each seen a different piece and assumed it was the whole. Mercer and Brooks had argued genuinely, reached a temporary alliance, and then staged a final break. The killer had apparently wanted the alliance broken for real. I examined the morning room. It was small, paneled, and connected to both the library and study. A writing desk stood beneath the window. The fireplace had been cleaned that morning, but grey ash remained in a brass tray. Inside it I found a partly burned slip of paper. Only 2 lines survived. "First departure confirms agreement. House clear before final delivery." I called Kramer. He bagged it and said words suggesting it should have been found earlier by someone else. At 6:15, I telephoned Wolfe. I reported Brooks's account, the stage departure, the unknown man at the station, and the burned note. Wolfe listened. "So Mercer did not dismiss Brooks," he said. "He deployed him." "Yes. And the guests changed their plans because they believed Mercer had rejected his closest associate. That seems to be it." Thus, the first departure accomplished 2 purposes. It removed Brooks, and it convinced the others that leaving was prudent. Whoever wrote the message wanted the house cleared. Precisely. The burned note says, "before final delivery." What delivery occurred after? 9. Nothing recorded. Then something unrecorded occurred. I looked toward the study corridor. The poison may already have been in the water. Probably. Then what still had to be delivered? Perhaps information, perhaps an object, perhaps a person. I told him Mercer's last words to Brooks. The danger arrived before the guests did. Wolfe made a small sound. "The murder began when the false financial records were created," he said. "The poison was not the plan. It was the conclusion." What should I do now? Find the account book requested by the man at the station. No one has mentioned one. The stranger did. That is sufficient. And if it does not exist, then determine why the murderer believed it did. He hung up. Outside, snow covered the drive where Daniel Brooks had staged his angry departure. Inside, the colored lights still blinked around a celebration that had ended by design. The private argument had not driven Brooks away. It had sent him into a trap. Harold Mercer had cleared his own house to expose a traitor. Instead, he had cleared it for his murderer. Chapter 4. The Missing Documents. A locked desk is an invitation written in brass. Harold Mercer's desk had 3 drawers on each side, one shallow drawer in the center, and enough polished walnut to suggest that whatever lay inside had earned the right to privacy. Inspector Kramer had already opened it, searched it, and announced that there was nothing unusual. That was why I searched it again. It was 9:20 the next morning. Snow pressed against the study windows and softened the grounds of Mercer House until the estate looked innocent. Her decoration remained in place, though someone had finally switched off the colored lights. A wreath hung above the fireplace, directly over the chair where Mercer had spent his last hour alive. Kramer stood by the door with an unlit cigar. "You looking for a second body?" he asked. "I would settle for the first body's account book." We searched the desk. You searched the drawers. That is what desks are for. Some desks are for making policemen overconfident. I removed contents one drawer at a time. Correspondence, receipts, stationery, fountain pen cartridges, 2 boxes of clips, and enough business cards to prove Mercer had met people without liking them. The lower right drawer contained hanging folders labeled with company names. 3 labels appeared in alphabetical sequence without folders behind them. Hawthorne Consulting, Northridge Development, Orion Reserve Account. The metal guides carried dust except where those folders had rested. They had been removed recently. Kramer came closer. "Empty labels," he said. "Missing folders. Maybe Mercer took them to the city office. Then why leave the labels? Because he was untidy." I looked around the study. Every pencil faced the same direction. The blotter was centered. The books were aligned by height. Mercer may have been a thief, a bully, or a terrible host, I said. He was not untidy. Behind the hanging files was a thin black notebook. Most of its pages contained numbers without headings. Several entries matched the unfamiliar company names. Amounts had been written beside dates, then crossed through in red pencil. Hawthorne Consulting had received $48,000 in March. Northridge had received $72,000 in May. Orion Reserve had received smaller sums every month for nearly a year. Kramer turned the pages. Brooks's authorization code? Sometimes. Other entries carried Mercer's initials, Linda Carter's filing mark, or no authorization at all. The final page held one sentence in Mercer's handwriting. 3 files complete. Originals retained separately. DB must see before decision. Kramer read it twice. That puts Brooks in the middle. It also says Mercer intended to show him the files, before accusing him or before clearing him. We searched the rest of the desk. Center drawer had a false depth. The wood beneath it sounded hollow when I tapped it with a letter opener. Kramer looked offended, as if the drawer had deceived him personally. A narrow panel slid forward when I pressed the rear corner. The space beneath was empty, but the dust showed 3 rectangular shapes. Each was the size of a document folder. The missing files had been hidden there. Kramer called Pearlie Stebbins and ordered a complete search of the house, the servants' rooms, the furnace, the garage, and every automobile that had remained overnight. I telephoned Wolfe. He was in the office after his morning visit to the orchids. I told him about the labels, the black notebook, and the empty compartment. "Who knew of the compartment?" he asked. "No one admits knowing. Who had access to the study?" "Mercer, Linda Carter, Nora Bell, Martha Cole, Samuel Kent, Andrew Mercer, Daniel Brooks, and anyone who entered during the celebration." "That is not access. That is population." Mercer locked the study when absent. Linda had a key. Nora had one for estate work. Kent may have had one. Andrew says he did not. "Mr. Brooks?" He says Mercer admitted him personally. Then the missing documents were removed after Mercer displayed or concealed them. Determine when each witness last saw the lower drawer opened. "You are more interested in the missing papers than the poison." "The poison proves that Mercer was killed. The papers may prove why." He hung up. Linda Carter was in the estate office, reviewing lists for Kramer. She had removed the holiday flowers from her desk, leaving a clean square where the vase had stood. She looked up when I entered. "Did Mr. Mercer keep financial folders in a hidden compartment?" I asked. Her face answered before her voice did. "Yes." "How many?" "3. What were they?" She folded her hands. "A confidential review of Mercer Brooks Company finances." That is a broad label. He believed someone close to him had been stealing. How much? He had not completed the total. More than $700,000, possibly much more. Who did he suspect? Daniel Brooks at first. At first? Linda looked toward the closed door. "Mr. Mercer asked me to compare authorization records with travel schedules. Several transfers bearing Daniel's code were made while he was out of state. Others were entered when he was in meetings with Mr. Mercer, so Brooks could not have approved them. Not personally. Who could use his code? Anyone with access to the master authorization file. Who had that? Mr. Mercer. Mr. Brooks. Kent for certain legal transactions. I had administrative access. 2 accountants at the city office could view it, but were not supposed to copy it. Andrew Mercer? No. Nora Bell? No. Could Mercer have made the transfers himself? Linda hesitated. He could have. That did not sound like the answer of a loyal secretary. Did you think he had? I considered it. Why? Harold sometimes moved money between companies without informing Daniel. He believed ownership gave him the right to rearrange accounts. Did you tell Brooks? No. Did you tell Kent? I gave Mr. Kent copies of 2 disputed agreements at Harold's request. When? The afternoon of the celebration. What happened to the originals? They went into the hidden compartment. That put Samuel Kent closer to the files than he had admitted. Why was Brooks summoned to Mercer's house? I asked. It was a holiday gathering. Mercer could have invited him by habit. Instead, according to Saul, he telephoned Brooks twice and insisted he attend despite their quarrel. Linda lowered her eyes. Harold wanted Daniel present when the review was complete. For a confrontation. For a decision. What decision? He did not say. I leaned against the edge of the desk. Miss Carter, Mercer sent you to the city office with a locked case before dinner. What did you remove from it? Copies of old investment agreements. Not the 3 folders? No, those remained here. How can you be certain? I saw them in the hidden compartment at 5:40. Did you see them later? At 8:05. That was important. What were you doing in the study? Mr. Mercer asked me to bring the black notebook from his desk. The folders were still there. Then you left for the city. I had returned from the city by then. Who entered the study after 8:05? Mr. Mercer, Daniel, Mr. Kent, Andrew, possibly Nora. Did Mercer show Brooks the folders during their private conversation? I assumed he did. Did you see them in Brooks's hands? No. Linda had just placed the last confirmed. Sighting of the files 15 minutes. Before Mercer ended the celebration. Daniel Brooks was still under guard in the library. He had shaved and changed clothes, which improved his appearance without improving Kramer's opinion of him. I showed him the notebook entry. DB, must see before decision. What decision? I asked. I don't know. Mercer summoned you to the estate, assembled evidence concerning stolen money, and wrote that you had to see it. Yet during your private conversation, he showed you nothing. He showed me transfer copies. The 3 missing folders. No. Loose pages. Where did he get them? From the desk. Which drawer? I was watching him, not the furniture. That was possible, but irritating. What did the papers prove? They showed payments carrying my code. Did he show you the travel comparisons proving some were made while you were away? No. Did he tell you he had cleared you? He had not cleared me. Brooks stood and walked toward the window. Pearlie, who had been leaning near the mantel, straightened. Brooks stopped. Harold said the records proved 2 people were involved, he continued. One person arranged the transfers. Another made them appear to come from me. Names? He refused to give them. Why? He said he needed one final item. The account book requested by the man at the station. Possibly. Why did Mercer summon you instead of calling the police? Brooks turned. because he believed someone in his own circle was watching every formal move he made. He wanted the gathering to appear social. Who knew about the audit? Linda? Kent? Whoever was stealing. That leaves a comfortable selection. Brooks's jaw tightened. Harold also suspected his son. Andrew had no access to the codes. He had debts. People with debts find access. Did you remove the folders? No. Did you know about the hidden compartment? No. Did Mercer show you where the files were kept? No. Brooks had denied theft, denied taking the files, and denied knowing why Mercer had insisted on his attendance. Yet he had obeyed a forged message and walked into a trap because he believed proof existed somewhere beyond the estate. Either he was innocent or he was working too hard to resemble it. Samuel Kent received me in the breakfast room. He was drinking coffee beside a window overlooking the snow-covered lawn. I asked about the two agreements Linda had copied for him. They concerned Hawthorne Consulting and North Ridge Development, he said, companies receiving unexplained transfers. I did not know they were unexplained. Who owned them? The ownership was obscured through holding corporations. Obscured by whom? Harold requested. The structure. There it was. According to Kent, Mercer himself had ordered the creation of Hawthorne Consulting 2 years earlier. North Ridge had been formed through a legal office in another state. Kent prepared incorporation papers, but never met its true owner. Could Mercer have been moving his own money? I asked. Yes. Then why accuse Brooks? Because Daniel's authorization appeared on the transfers. Even though Mercer created the companies, Kent lifted his cup. Harold may have believed Daniel had taken control of them, or Mercer may have created the fraud and planned to blame his partner. That is possible. Did you remove the files? No. Did you know where they were? No, that was false. Linda had given him copies of agreements, specifically destined for the hidden compartment. Even if he had not seen it, he knew Mercer maintained secret records. Why did Mercer ask you to remain after the celebration? He intended to revise the partnership agreement. To remove Brooks. I cannot discuss that. You can discuss it with Kramer. Kent's eyes cooled. Harold had prepared 2 possible documents. One dissolved the partnership and accused Daniel of fraud. The other transferred greater control to Daniel and removed several accounts from Harold's personal authority. Opposite decisions. He had not decided which was justified, and the missing files would decide it. Yes, that explained Mercer's notebook. DB must see before decision. Brooks had been summoned not merely to face an accusation, but to participate in a choice that could destroy or strengthen his partnership. Someone who feared either result had ended the evening first. The search of the house produced no folders. The furnace held recent ashes, but the housekeeper swore nothing had been burned after noon on the day of the celebration. Snow outside the conservatory doors showed no tracks, because it had fallen after midnight, covering anything earlier. In the study, I examined the empty compartment again. A tiny piece of red paper clung to the rear hinge. It was glossy on one side and torn into a narrow triangle. The holiday gift tags in the drawing room were made of the same red paper. That meant someone had handled the compartment while carrying, wearing, or using one of the tags from the celebration. I checked the guests' gifts. Clara Wynne had brought a silver picture frame with a red tag. Evelyn Ross had brought foundation reports tied with green ribbon. Andrew had brought nothing. Kent had brought legal documents in a black case. Brooks had arrived with a narrow package wrapped in brown paper, a holiday gift for Mercer that no one could now locate. What was in Brooks's package? I asked Linda. A leather account book. The room got smaller. Describe it. Dark brown, about 10 inches high. His initials were stamped inside. He and Mr. Mercer used matching books when they founded the company. The man at the station asked Brooks whether he had brought Mercer's account book. Linda's face changed. Then he meant the old partnership ledger. Where is it? I don't know, Mr. Mercer opened the gift before dinner and took it to the study. The missing account book had entered Mercer House openly. disguised as a holiday present. By 4 o'clock, Kramer had everyone back under one roof. He wanted the estate searched again. I wanted to call Wolfe. I gave him the full report, including the missing financial folders, Mercer's 2 possible partnership documents, the red paper fragment, and the leather ledger Brooks had brought. Wolfe was silent, long enough for me to hear Fritz moving dishes in the dining room. "At what time did Mercer receive the ledger?" he asked. "Before dinner, around 6:15. "When was it last seen?" "Linda saw it on his study desk at 8:05. "The same time she saw the folders?" "Yes." "Then the thief sought 4 items, not 3. The files and the ledger." "Possibly." "Why was the ledger requested at the railway station?" "To remove Brooks from the estate." "That could have been done without naming an object." The question tested whether Brooks possessed it. "So the man at the station did not know Mercer had taken it?" "Exactly." I sat straighter. "Then, the person at the station and the person who stole the documents may not be the same, or the plan had ceased to proceed as expected." "What plan?" "The one begun when the false transfers were created. The murder, the forged message, the staged departure, and the missing files are parts of it. Do not assume they were all performed by one hand." "Where do I look?" "At the last person who could know the ledger was in the study, and the first person who discovered it was gone." "That gives me the whole house." "No, it gives you Miss Carter." I frowned. Linda admitted seeing the ledger and the folders at 8:05. She also participated in the financial review, had a key to the study, and knew Mercer's filing system. "You think she stole them?" "I think she knows more than she has said. She brought the audit to light." People sometimes reveal a smaller secret to conceal a larger one. Before I could answer, Linda Carter appeared in the study doorway. Her face was pale. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, "there is something I did not tell you." I kept the receiver against my ear. "What?" "At 10:30 that night, after the guests had gone, I saw someone leave Mr. Mercer's study carrying the 3 financial folders." "Who?" She looked past me toward the corridor. "Samuel Kent." Wolfe's voice came through the receiver. "Archie, do not react. Ask her why she waited." I looked at Linda. "Why did you wait until now?" "Because Mr. Kent told me. The files proved Daniel Brooks was guilty. He said taking them was the only way to protect the company until the police understood. And now Mr. Kent denies knowing they existed." Behind her, a floorboard creaked. Someone had been listening from the hall. By the time I reached the doorway, the corridor was empty. The missing documents had become more than proof of theft. They were proof that at least one witness had lied about entering Mercer's study after the celebration ended. And someone nearby had just learned that Linda Carter was finally ready to tell the truth. Chapter 5. An exit planned months earlier. When a man prepares to leave town 5 weeks before anyone knows he will need to, there are 2 possibilities. He is either unusually efficient or unusually guilty. Inspector Kramer preferred the second. He telephoned the brownstone at 8:20 the morning after Linda Carter named Samuel Kent as the man she had seen carrying Mercer's missing folders. "We found Brooks's ticket," Kramer said. I had not finished my second cup of coffee. He already had a car. Not that kind of ticket. A railroad reservation. Sleeper compartment to Chicago, leaving the station at 11:45 on the night Mercer died. That cleared the fog better than the coffee. Booked when? 5 weeks ago. Under his own name? Under the name David Barlow. Same initials. Paid in cash through a travel office near his company. Did he use it? No. The train left without him. Then either he missed his escape or he never intended one. Tell Wolfe. Wolfe was upstairs with the orchids and would remain there until 11. I told Kramer he could either wait or climb 3 flights and explain murder to 10,000 flowering plants. He waited. At 11:03, Wolfe entered the office wearing a brown suit, a yellow shirt, and the expression of a man whose morning had been satisfactory until humanity resumed. Kramer occupied the red leather chair. Pearly Stebbins stood by the bookshelves. Saul Panzer had arrived 10 minutes earlier and sat near the globe with a folder on his knee. I gave Wolfe the railroad information. He lowered himself into his chair. "Destination?" he asked. "Chicago," Kramer said. "Private sleeper compartment. Departure at 11:45 on the night of the murder. Booked 36 days earlier." "By whom?" The clerk remembers a man matching Brooks's age and build. "That is not identification. We found the reservation card in Brooks's office safe." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "Under the name David Barlow?" "Yes, yet the card was retained where a search would find it." Kramer leaned forward. "A murderer does not always expect his office safe to be searched. A murderer planning escape for 5 weeks should." Kramer removed his cigar. "You can explain anything away." "No, I can refuse to accept your explanation merely because it arrived first." Saul opened his folder. "Brooks has financial trouble," he said. "Serious trouble." He placed several sheets on Wolfe's desk. Daniel Brooks had borrowed heavily against his share in the Mercer Brooks Investment Company. Two properties he owned personally were mortgaged beyond their current value. He had guaranteed loans for a manufacturing venture that failed 6 months earlier. Unless he obtained a large sum within 3 weeks, his creditors could force the sale of nearly everything he owned. "How large?" I asked. $400,000 immediately. Possibly twice that within the year." Kramer grunted. "Mercer discovers money missing. Brooks is broke. Brooks books a train under a false name. Mercer dies." Wolfe studied the figures. "Did the missing company funds enter Mr. Brooks's personal accounts?" "No," Saul said. "Not directly. Indirectly. I found payments to one of his creditors through Hawthorne Consulting." Kramer sat back with satisfaction. "There." Saul continued before the satisfaction became permanent. "The payment was made without Brooks's name appearing. It could have benefited him, but I have not proved he knew of it." "How much?" Wolfe asked. $60,000. Enough to delay a creditor, not enough to solve his difficulties." "Right." Wolfe looked at Kramer. "When was the holiday gathering arranged?" "Invitations went out 12 days before Mercer died, and the reservation was made 36 days before." Kramer said, "Brooks knew Mercer's habits. Maybe he knew there would be a holiday party." "Perhaps, but he could not know the date unless Mercer told him privately." Partners talk. These partners had ceased talking pleasantly. I said, "Mercer may have planned the gathering earlier and sent invitations later." Wolfe nodded. "Determine that." Kramer stood. "You can determine it. I have a murder investigation. You have a suspect. That is often the enemy of an investigation." Kramer put on his hat and left with Pearly, promising to return when he had something Wolfe could not turn upside down. Saul remained. "What else?" Wolfe asked. "Brooks visited Chicago twice during the last 4 months. Both trips concerned the failed manufacturing venture. One creditor has headquarters there, so the destination was plausible." I said. "Yes, but the train reservation was one way. That is less friendly." Saul had also traced the reservation through a travel agency. Clark remembered the customer wearing dark glasses and a heavy overcoat. Though the day had been mild, he had spoken briefly and requested no return ticket. "Height?" Wolfe asked. "About 5 feet 10. Brooks was 5 feet 11. Samuel Kent was 5 feet 10. Andrew Mercer was nearly 6 feet. Linda Carter could not have been mistaken for any of them unless the clerk had conducted the interview from another room." "Handwriting?" Wolfe asked. The reservation form was typed by the clerk. The customer signed a David Barlow in block letters. "Convenient," Saul nodded. "The cash came from a bank envelope." The clerk remembered the bank name because it was printed in red. "Which bank?" "Mercer National Trust." That bank handled several of Harold Mercer's private accounts. Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes. I waited. Saul waited. The office clock contributed seconds. Finally Wolfe said, "Someone planned a departure before the gathering was announced. That does not prove Mr. Brooks planned it." The card was in his safe, I said. Yes, either he retained it or someone placed it there. Who could enter the safe? Mr. Brooks, his secretary, and anyone who knew the combination. Mercer, possibly. I looked at the financial statements. You think Mercer arranged the ticket? I think the reservation served someone's purpose. We have not identified whose. Wolfe opened his eyes. Archie, return to Mercer House. Learn precisely when the celebration was conceived, not merely when invitations were issued. Question Miss Carter regarding the reservation card. Then ask Mr. Brooks why a creditor in Chicago received money from Hawthorne Consulting. And Kent? Do not neglect him. Miss Carter says she saw him with the missing folders. He denies knowing they existed. One of them is lying, possibly both. I drove north beneath a sky the color of old silver. The roads were clear, but snow remained piled along the stone walls. Mercer House stood under bare trees, its holiday wreaths now looking less like decoration and more like evidence that no one had remembered to remove. Daniel Brooks had been moved to a guest room under police guard. Kramer had not arrested him, but he had arranged matters, so Brooks would need permission to sneeze. Brooks received the news of the railroad ticket without surprise. That reservation was cancelled, he said. It was not. It should have been. You made it? Yes, that saved us from one theory and created another. When? 5 or 6 weeks ago. Why use the name David Barlow? Brooks walked to the window. I did not want Mercer to know. Know what? That I was considering leaving the company. For Chicago, to meet a creditor and negotiate work with another investment firm. Your current firm had your name on the door. It also had Harold Mercer behind the desk. Brooks explained that his financial difficulties had become severe by early autumn. Mercer knew about some of the debts, but not all. Brooks feared Mercer would use them to force him from the partnership without a fair settlement. So you planned to leave town on the night of a celebration that had not yet been announced. The date had nothing to do with the gathering. It was the first night after the company's year-end review was supposed to finish. Who set the review date? Harold. When? About 2 months ago. That was the bridge. Mercer had scheduled the year-end financial review long before he announced the holiday gathering. Brooks booked the train for the night the review would end. The gathering had later been placed on the same evening. Why? I asked. Brooks turned from the window. Harold said combining them would make the review less conspicuous. To whom? He did not say. Did Linda Carter know about the reservation? No. Did Samuel Kent? I asked Kent to prepare a draft notice of withdrawal from the partnership. He knew I might leave. Did he know the train? I may have mentioned Chicago. Did Mercer know? No. You kept the reservation card in your office safe. I intended to cancel after Harold, and I began reviewing the false transfers. I thought we might still save the partnership. But you did not cancel it. I forgot. That was possible. It was also one of the most common sentences spoken by guilty men and husbands. I showed him the record of the $60,000 payment to his creditor. Brooks read it twice. I've authorized this. It benefited you. It delayed a foreclosure. I assumed the creditor had granted an extension. Generosity in finance is rare, I know. Hawthorne Consulting paid the money. Mercer created Hawthorne. Brooks looked up, then Harold paid it. Why? To keep me from learning how bad things were, or to make you appear connected to stolen funds. His face became still. Brooks said, Harold would not frame me. He accused you of stealing. He suspected me. That is different. Not in a courtroom. I left him and found Linda Carter in the estate office. She admitted. The year-end review had been scheduled 8 weeks before the celebration. Mercer originally planned to complete it privately, with Brooks, Kent, and 2 accountants from the city office. What happened to the accountants? I asked Mr. Mercer cancelled them 10 days before the gathering. Why? He said the matter had become personal. When did he decide to hold the celebration? 3 weeks before his death. That meant the gathering was arranged after Brooks booked the train, but before invitations were sent. Did Mercer know Brooks planned to leave the partnership? Linda lowered her eyes. Yes, Brooks says he did not. Mr. Kent told him. That gave Kent another appearance in the center of things. When? About 4 weeks ago. Mr. Mercer asked me to locate Brooks' partnership agreement. Later, he told me Daniel had arranged transportation out of town. How did Mercer know about the train? I assumed Mr. Kent told him. Did Mercer see the reservation card? No. Could you enter Brooks's office safe? No. Could Kent? He sometimes stored legal papers there. He may have known the combination. Could Mercer? Yes. Daniel and Harold once shared it for emergency access. I asked about the missing folders. Linda repeated that she had seen Kent carrying them from the study at 10:30. Why were you still awake? I asked. I was in the estate office, preparing the next morning's schedule. What exactly did you see? Mr. Kent came from the study corridor, carrying 3 grey folders under his arm. He entered the front hall. Did you see him leave the house? No. Then you did not see him take the folders away. I saw him carrying them. Could he have put them somewhere else in the house? Yes. Why did you believe his claim that Brooks was guilty? Because the folders carried Daniel's initials. That was new. On the labels? No. Mr. Kent showed me one page. It had Daniel's signature. Before or after Mercer died? Before, around 10:40. Where? In the estate office. I stared at her. You were with Kent at 10:40. For less than a minute. Yet Kent claimed he left at 9:12. Linda's face changed. He did leave. Then how was he here at 10:40? She opened her mouth and closed it. I said, Miss Carter, either you confused the time, mistook another man for Kent, or Kent returned secretly. I know Samuel Kent. Which entrance did he use? I did not see. Where was his coat? He was wearing it. Did it have snow on it? There was no snow yet. Did he carry a hat? Yes. Then he returned prepared to leave again. Linda pressed her fingertips together. He told me Mr. Mercer had asked him to come back. Did Mercer confirm that? No. Did Kent enter the study again? I do not know. He walked toward the front hall after showing me the page. Then, who entered the study after him? Nora Bell took Mr. Mercer a file at 10. That was before Kent returned. The housekeeper carried a tray through the corridor around 11. No one else was recorded. I telephoned Wolfe from the estate office. He listened as I described Brooks's explanation, the early review date, Kent's knowledge of Chicago, and Linda's admission that Kent returned after his official departure. Mr. Kent lied about his final departure, Wolfe said. Yes. Did he return before or after Mr. Brooks was struck at the station? Brooks says he was attacked around 9:40. Kent returned around 10:30. Enough time to travel between them. The station is 12 miles away. Yes, so Mr. Kent could have been the man in the railway coat. He matches the clerk's general height too. Do not gallop. Similar height is not identity. What about Brooks's ticket? It is authentic. That simplifies nothing. I sat at Linda's desk. Brooks planned to leave months in advance because his finances were collapsing. Mercer learned of it. Kent knew. The killer used the plan to make his disappearance look like flight. Likely. Then the reservation was not evidence created by the murderer. No, it was an innocent preparation converted into guilty evidence. Innocent may be generous. Brooks intended to abandon the partnership secretly. Disloyalty is not homicide. I told him the payment to Brooks's creditor. Someone used stolen money to relieve his debt, Wolfe said. Why? To buy him. He denies knowledge. To frame him. More promising. A financial trail was created before Mercer began his review. The railroad reservation supplied an escape route. The forged message sent Brooks to the station. The stranger asked for the account book. Each element made Mr. Brooks appear to have stolen money, planned flight, and removed evidence. So the murder was prepared months earlier. The accusation was. The killing became necessary when Mercer discovered the design. That was better than anything I had. I asked what to do with Kent. Find him. That proved harder than expected. Samuel Kent was not in the house. Kramer had permitted him to visit his office under police observation. The detective assigned to him reported that Kent entered his building at 12:10 and never came out. At 4:15, police searched the office. Kent was gone. A rear service elevator connected to an underground delivery passage. His coat and hat remained in his private room. The partnership dissolution drafts were missing from his files. On his desk lay a train timetable. The 11:45 service to Chicago had been circled in red. Kramer called it proof that Kent was helping Brooks escape. Wolfe, when informed, called it proof that Kent wanted us to think about the train. At 6, Saul telephoned the brownstone and left a message for me. I called him from Mercer House. I traced the rest of Brooks's debts, he said. Some are real, some are not. How can a debt be unreal? A loan agreement for $200,000 carries Brooks's signature, but the lender never advanced the money. The agreement was filed anyway and used to place a claim against his partnership shares. Who prepared it? Samuel Kent. There was more. The false lender was owned by a holding company connected to Northridge Development, one of the companies named in Mercer's missing folders. Kent had helped create Brooks's financial ruin. I found Kramer in the front hall and gave him the news. He ordered every road, station, and airport watched. Then a servant came down the staircase carrying a grey folder. She had found it beneath the mattress in Samuel Kent's former guest room. Inside were copies of transfers bearing Brooks' signature, the false loan agreement, and a handwritten list of dates. One date was circled, the night of Mercer's holiday gathering. Beside it, Kent had written, DB leaves 8:30, train 11:45, HM alone after 10. Kramer read it and looked at me. Months in advance, he said. The murder had not begun with the poisoned water or the forged message. Someone had first weakened Brooks financially, arranged a plausible escape, and waited for Mercer to discover the missing money. Daniel Brooks had planned to leave town. Samuel Kent had planned what everyone would believe after he did. Chapter 6. The poison toast laboratories are useful because chemicals do not care whom Inspector Kramer wants to arrest. At 9:15 the next morning, Kramer telephoned the brownstone and informed me that the poison had changed glasses. That sounds inconvenient, I said. It was in Mercer's mineral water glass, but it did not come from the mineral water bottle. Yesterday your laboratory said the cap had been lifted. They said it might have been lifted. The marks are old. The bottle is clean. Then Mercer poisoned himself by choosing the wrong glass? Get Wolfe. Wolfe was upstairs with the orchids. Since Kramer was unlikely to discuss toxicology with 10,000 plants, he came to West 35th Street at 11:30, carrying Dr. Ellis and a brown evidence box. Wolfe entered the office at 11:32, took his chair, and frowned at the invasion. Proceed, he said. Dr. Ellis opened the box and removed a photograph of a cut crystal glass. It was the same one that had stood beside Mercer's body. The glass contained digitalis residue, he said. The mineral water naturally carried some after being poured into it, but the strongest concentration was not in the remaining water. He pointed to an enlarged photograph of the glass's inner surface. The poison had dried beneath this decorative ridge. Liquid from an earlier drink deposited it there. When Mercer later filled the glass with water, only part of the residue dissolved. I said, the glass was poisoned before it reached the study. Yes. How long's before? Probably several hours. Kramer put an unlit cigar between his teeth. It was used for the holiday toast. That attracted Wolfe's complete attention. The gathering had opened with a toast shortly after 6:30. The servants had placed crystal glasses on a silver tray. Most contained sparkling wine. Mercer did not drink wine because of his heart medicine, so his glass held spiced apple punch. Slow poison, Wolfe asked. The dose was substantial but not immediately fatal, Dr. Ellis replied. Mercer would first have experienced nausea, weakness, visual disturbance, and an irregular heartbeat. The symptoms could develop gradually over 3 or 4 hours. That explains his agitation, I said. And his death after midnight, Kramer added. Dr. Ellis nodded. He was poisoned during the toast, remained active through dinner, and deteriorated later. The mineral water did not introduce the poison. It merely carried the remaining residue into his final drink. That cleared one confusion while introducing several better ones. Why was the same glass in the study? I asked. Linda Carter says Mercer used a distinctive glass at every holiday gathering, Kramer said. After dinner, a servant placed it on the study tray because he often used it again for mineral water. Wolfe looked displeased. A deplorable custom, he said, but convenient for the murderer. Kramer removed 3 statements from his pocket. Clara Wynne, Evelyn Ross, and Linda Carter all saw Daniel Brooks hand Mercer the glass before the toast. The room became quiet, I said. Personally? Personally. Brooks took it from the tray, crossed the drawing room, and gave it to Mercer. Wolfe turned to me. You did not learn this. No one considered the toast important. They were occupied remembering departures. People remember drama and neglect mechanism. Kramer tapped the statements. Brooks handled the poisoned glass. He was broke, had a train reservation, and was being accused of theft. Samuel Kent prepared the false debt, forged evidence against him, returned secretly to the estate, removed the files, and disappeared, I said. I can arrest more than one man. Wolfe looked at Dr. Ellis. Could the poison have been placed in the glass before Mr. Brooks touched it? Certainly. It was likely applied as a concentrated liquid and allowed to dry. Would it be visible? Not in the punch. The spices and color would conceal it. Thank you. Dr. Ellis left. Kramer remained. Wolfe asked. Who arranged the toast? Linda Carter prepared the guest list. Nora Bell supervised the drawing room. Martha Cole brought the tray from the pantry. Who placed Mercer's special glass upon it? Kramer's jaw moved. We are checking. Then you have not earned Mr. Brooks. I have witnesses who saw him hand over the poison. You have witnesses who saw him carry a glass 6 feet. That proves neither preparation nor knowledge. It proves opportunity. It proves that someone could use him. Kramer stood. Samuel Kent is still missing. Brooks is sitting under guard. One of them poisoned Mercer, and I intend to find out which. An admirable intention. Do not spoil it by choosing prematurely. After Kramer left, Wolfe told me to return to Mercer House and reconstruct the toast one hand at a time. From the cupboard to Mercer, he said. You think the glass was selected before Brooks touched it? I think a murderer who prepared evidence for months would not trust success to a random glass. The road north had been cleared, but snow lay deep across the fields. Mercer House appeared stripped of celebrations, now that the colored lights were off. The wreath remained over the entrance, though its red ribbon had begun to sag. Martha Cole, the housekeeper, received me in the pantry. She was a square woman with gray hair and the expression of someone who considered murder an improper addition to domestic work. Mr. Mercer's crystal glass was kept in this cabinet, she said. She opened a locked cupboard. 11 matching glasses stood inside. One space was empty. How was his different? His initials were engraved beneath the base. Who knew? Everyone in the household. Who removed it for the toast? I did. When? At 6:10. Did you wash it? It was already clean. I polished it and placed it on the sideboard. With the others? No. The wine glasses were on the pantry table. Mr. Mercer's glass stood separately because Nora Bell prepared his punch. Nora mixed it? Yes. That sent me to Nora. She was in the estate office sorting sympathy letters. She admitted making Mercer's drink from apple juice, spices, and warm water. When did you pour it? I asked. A few minutes before the toast. Was the glass on the sideboard? Yes. Was it empty? Yes. Did you leave it unattended? For perhaps 5 minutes. Linda called me to the telephone. Who entered the pantry during those 5 minutes? Several people could have. The door to the service hall was open. Brooks? I did not see him. Kent? He asked a servant where the washroom was shortly before the toast. Was the washroom near the pantry? Across the service hall. That was the first useful step. Who took the filled glass to the drawing room? Nora Bell said a maid named Elsie did. Elsie had returned to her family in town after being questioned the first morning. Kramer sent a car for her while I continued. Linda Carter remembered the toast clearly. At 6:25, guests gathered around the holiday tree. Nora entered with the tray of wine. Elsie followed, carrying Mercer's punch. Then why did Brooks hand it to him? I asked. Mr. Mercer was speaking with Clara. Elsie could not reach him through the group. Daniel took the glass from her and said he would deliver it. Did anyone ask him to? No. That sounded worse for Brooks until Linda added, he did it every year. Every year? Daniel always handed Harold the first drink. It was a private joke from the company's first successful holiday. The murderer had not needed to guess who would carry the glass. The ritual was established. Who knew the tradition? I asked. Every regular guest. Including Kent? Yes. Did Mercer seem ill immediately after drinking? No. He gave the toast, drank twice, and finished most of the punch during dinner. What did he say in the toast? Linda thought. To honest accounts, loyal partners, and endings, properly earned. That sounded less festive when examined after a murder. Elsie arrived at 1:30. She was 19, frightened, and certain she had done something wrong, merely by being asked questions twice. She carried Mercer's glass from the pantry to the drawing room. Before she reached the guests, Samuel Kent stopped her. What did he say? I asked. He said the base was wet and Mr. Mercer might drop it. What did he do? He took it and wiped the bottom with his handkerchief. How long did he hold it? Only a moment. Did he touch the rim? I don't know. He held it close. Then, he gave it back. Mr. Brooks took it from me near the tree. Kent had handled the poisoned glass between the pantry and Brooks. Why didn't you tell the police? They asked who gave Mr. Mercer the drink. That was Mr. Brooks. Questions determine memories. Kramer had asked for the final hand, not every hand. I called him and gave him Elsie's statement. His response was brief and energetic. Then I went to Brooks. He was still confined to the guest room, though the guard outside now looked apologetic. Brooks sat near the window, reading nothing. You handed Mercer the toast, I said. Yes, you neglected to mention it. I have handed him that drink at every holiday celebration for 18 years. Samuel Kent handled the glass first. Brooks looked up sharply. Why? He told the maid the base was wet. Brooks closed the book. Kent knew about the tradition. So did half the room. But Kent had prepared false debts against you, knew about the train reservation, returned after his official departure, and removed the audit files. That makes him dishonest. It does not explain everything. What remains? Brooks stood. Harold summoned me to the estate before the audit was complete. You asked why, and I said I did not know. That was not entirely true. Entirely. He telephoned me 3 days before the gathering. He said Samuel Kent had requested a private settlement. Settlement of what? Money missing from the company. Kent admitted involvement. Not directly. Harold said Kent claimed he could identify the person responsible if we agreed not to prosecute. Who was he offering? Me. Kent had proposed solving the fraud by delivering Brooks as the thief. Why did Mercer invite Kent to the gathering? To make him believe we were considering his proposal. And the confidential review. Harold intended to show me enough evidence to prove signatures were forged. Then we would confront Kent together. That matched Mercer's hidden notebook entry. DB must see before decision. The decision was whether to accuse you or trust you, I said. Yes. What changed during your private conversation? Harold showed me one transfer with my signature dated while we were both in Chicago. I proved it could not be mine. That cleared me in his mind. Then you staged the quarrel and departure. Yes. Why did Kent expect you to take the account book? Brooks looked toward the door. The old ledger contained samples of both our signatures and records of the original authorization system. It could prove how the false signatures were made. Mercer had it in the study. Yes. Kent did not know that. He must have thought I still carried it. I asked whether Kent knew Brooks had booked the Chicago train. He prepared my withdrawal papers, Brooks said. He knew the date I planned to leave. So he had the debts, reservation, forged transfers, and train waiting. He needed only Mercer dead and you missing. Brooks's mouth hardened. He spent months arranging it. I returned to the study. The poison had been administered before the private conversation, before the forged note sent Brooks to the station, and before Mercer announced the celebration would end early. That altered the meaning of everything. The killer had not poisoned Mercer because the evening changed. He had expected the evening to continue normally. Mercer's growing illness made him irritable and anxious. The forged note made him suspect a trap. Brooks' proof about the impossible signature made him realize the fraud reached someone close to him. Those pressures caused him to dismiss the guests hours earlier than planned. The early ending was not part of the murderer's design. It disrupted it. I telephoned Wolfe. The glass was poisoned before the toast, I said. Nora left it unattended in the pantry. Kent entered the service hall. He later stopped the maid, held the glass, and wiped it with his handkerchief. Brooks carried it the final 6 feet because that was their annual tradition. Indeed, the poison acted slowly. Mercer was already ill when he spoke with Brooks. Ending the celebration early was his decision, not the killer's plan. Precisely. That ruined Kent's timing. How? He expected guests to remain until midnight. Mercer would die later, perhaps after everyone had mixed through the house. Brooks would leave for his train, and Kent could point to the debts and stolen funds. But Mercer expelled them. Yes, Kent had to improvise. He left officially at 9:12, went to the station to attack Brooks, then returned to the estate at 10:30 and removed the files. Good. You sound as if you knew. I suspected the early ending was adverse to the murderer because so much effort was made to manipulate the departures afterward. What about the forged message, prepared in advance to ensure Mr. Brooks followed his existing escape plan and vanished before Mercer's death was discovered. Kent wanted him on the Chicago train, or dead beside the platform if he resisted. I looked at Mercer's desk. Then the murder began months earlier, but the final night went wrong almost immediately. Yes, the murderer relied on time. Mercer's body did not obey the intended schedule, and Mercer himself altered the social one. What final pieces do you need? The handkerchief. Kent's? If he used it to handle a glass coated with concentrated digitalis, traces may remain. He has disappeared. His coat and hat remained in his office. Perhaps his other possessions did also. Kramer searched Kent's office again. At 4:40, he telephoned Mercer House. A monogrammed handkerchief had been found in the pocket of Kent's spare overcoat. It carried traces of digitalis and apple punch. That was nearly enough for an arrest. But Kent was still missing. Saul supplied the final movement of the day. He had traced a payment from Northridge Development to a private medical supplier. The purchase description was harmless heart medication. The actual order included concentrated digitalis extract. Samuel Kent had signed for it 4 months earlier. When I gave Wolfe the news, he said, "Arrange the gathering. Already, the facts are assembled. We require only the murderer. He is missing. No, he is waiting." Where? Near the evidence he could not carry. I looked at the empty compartment in Mercer's desks. The account book? Yes, Kent took the 3 audit folders, but not the old ledger. He returned expecting to find it. It was gone before he reached the study. Who has it? That is what we shall allow him to learn. Wolfe instructed me to tell Kramer that the partnership ledger had been found and would be examined at the Brownstone the following evening. You expect Kent to come for it? He has spent months arranging Daniel Brooks's guilt. The ledger can destroy that arrangement. He cannot permit it to reach the police. What if he knows we are setting a trap? He will know. Necessity often compels a man to enter a trap with his eyes open. Outside the study windows, evening settled over the snow. Inside, the crystal glass stood sealed in an evidence box, harmless now but eloquent. Daniel Brooks had handed Mercer the poison. Samuel Kent had made certain it was there. The holiday toast had begun the killing hours before anyone understood that the celebration was ending. Chapter 7. Why the party ended. A trap is most useful when the wrong man knows it is a trap and the right man thinks it is meant for someone else. At 9 the next morning, Wolfe's office contained a leather account book that had never belonged to Harold Mercer. It was an excellent account book. Fritz had found it in a cupboard where it had spent 12 years recording household purchases before being replaced by a modern ledger. I had polished the cover, stamped the letters HM inside it with an old marking tool, and placed it on the long table beneath the office lamp. From the doorway, it looked capable of sending 3 men to prison. Inspector Kramer looked at it, and then at me. "That is your great evidence. It is bait. It looks like an old grocery book. That is because you are standing too close." Wolfe sat behind his desk with his eyes closed. He had finished his morning hours with the orchids and had consumed half a glass of beer. Saul Panzer occupied the yellow chair. Pearlie Stebbins stood near the entrance to the hall. The message released through police channels stated that Mercer's original ledger had been recovered and would be examined at the Brownstone before being transferred to the district attorney. Wolfe expected Samuel Kent to come for it. At 9:12 the doorbell rang. Pearlie moved toward the hall, but I raised a hand and went myself. The man outside was Samuel Kent. He was cold, tired, unshaven, and carrying no weapon that I could see. Snow had melted along the shoulders of his coat. His silver hair, usually arranged with legal precision, had lost the argument. "I wish to speak with Mr. Wolfe," he said. "You picked a good morning. I know about the ledger." "That makes you popular," I admitted him. Pearlie searched him before allowing him into the office. Kent endured it with the expression of a man who intended to object in writing. Kramer stood. "You are under arrest." "For what?" "Obstruction, removal of evidence, evading police supervision, and anything else I think of before lunch." Kent looked toward Wolfe. "I came because the ledger is false." Wolfe opened his eyes. "How do you know?" he asked. "Harold Mercer's original partnership ledger was dark red, not brown." The room settled. Kramer glanced at the bait. "You could know that because you stole it." "I know it because I helped prepare the partnership agreement 18 years ago." Wolfe indicated the red leather chair. "Sit." Kramer objected, but Wolfe ignored him. Kent lowered himself into the chair and looked at the imitation ledger again. "You disappeared from your office," Wolfe said. "Yes." "You returned secretly to Mercer House on the night of the murder." "Yes." "You carried 3 folders from the study." "Yes." Kramer took a step forward. Kent lifted one hand. "They were not Mercer's audit files." That brought everyone to attention. "What were they?" I asked. "Copies I had brought with me." Linda Carter had seen 3 gray folders. She assumed they came from the hidden compartment because Kent told her they proved Brooks was guilty. Kent now said they contained partnership papers, debt agreements, and transfer copies he had assembled himself. "Why carry them from the study?" Kramer demanded. "Because Mercer had refused them." "Why lie about knowing the audit files existed?" "Because I had helped create some of the companies under review. That was motive for dishonesty, but not yet murder." Kent explained that Mercer had used Hawthorne Consulting and Northridge Development to move money privately. Kent had formed the companies as counsel, but claimed he did not know they later became vehicles for theft. "Daniel Brooks knew," Kent said. Kramer gave a hard laugh. "Naturally. Brooks approached me 4 months ago," he said. Mercer had authorized several private transfers and needed documents prepared. He supplied signatures, codes, and instructions. "The false loan against Brooks's own partnership shares?" Saul asked. Kent looked at him. "Brooks asked me to prepare it." I said, "You expect us to believe Brooks arranged his own financial ruin?" "An apparent ruin. The debt gave him a reason to leave the company, disappear, or claim that someone had forced him into desperate conduct." Wolfe's fingers pressed against the chair arms. "Continue." Kent admitted buying the concentrated digitalis. Kramer reached inside his coat. "But not for murder," Kent said quickly. "Brooks told me it was required for testing contamination at a medical storage property." owned by North Ridge. The invoice was placed through my office because the supplier required a professional account. And the handkerchief? I asked. I wiped Mercer's glass because the maid nearly dropped it. I did not poison it. The cloth carried digitalis. Then the glass was already contaminated. That was possible. Digitalis on the outer base could have transferred to Kent's handkerchief. If the poison had been applied carelessly, or if Brooks had spread a trace where Kent would touch it. Kramer said, "Why did you run?" Because I realized every trail led to me. The companies, the Falst, the digitalis order, the folders Linda saw, and my return to the estate. Someone had arranged it. Brooks, yes, proof. Kent reached inside his coat slowly. Pearlie moved, but Kent produced only a folded envelope. Inside was a note in block letters. The red ledger will clear you. Bring it to the station. Combe alone. It was nearly identical to the message sent to Brooks. Where did you get this? I asked. It was pushed under my office door yesterday, shortly before I disappeared. You went to the station? No. I finally understood that Daniel had received a similar message because he wanted everyone to know he had received it. Then where did you go? To an apartment I keep for private meetings. I needed time to think. Kramer's face reddened. You let us search half the state because you needed time? I feared whoever killed Mercer. Wolfe regarded Kent for several seconds. Why did you return to Mercer House at 10:30? Brooks telephoned me at my home, he said. Mercer had reconsidered the settlement and wanted the partnership documents brought back. Brooks was supposedly unconscious at the railway station, I said. That is what he later claimed. The caller was Brooks. Can you identify his voice? I had heard it for 18 years. Kent drove back to the estate. He entered through the side door, found Linda in the office, showed her one page bearing Brooks's signature, and told her Mercer had summoned him. He then went to the study. Was Mercer alive? Kramer asked. Yes. The answer struck the room. What time? Approximately 10:35. What condition was he in? Pale and sweating. He complained of dizziness. I urged him to call a doctor. What did he say? He said Brooks had betrayed him. Then he ordered me out. Did you see the audit folders? Yes. They were in the hidden compartment. That meant they had not yet been stolen when Kent returned. Did you take them? Wolfe asked. No. I took my 3 folders and left. Through which door? The side entrance. Did you see anyone? A car stood beyond the hedge without lights. What kind? A dark sedan. I could not identify it. Daniel Brooks's sedan had supposedly remained at the railway station until morning. But the station clerk had seen only the car arrive. He had not seen who parked it, and Brooks's account of being struck came from Brooks alone. Wolfe turned to Saul. Your report concerning the station. Saul opened his folder. The baggage clerk remembered a man in a railway coat. Yesterday, I found the coat in a storage locker at the station. The locker had been rented with coins, but one pocket contained fivers matching the upholstery of Brooks's sedan. Kramer said, Brooks wore the coat, probably, Saul replied. There is more, Wolfe said. Saul nodded. The bruise on Brooks's temple had been examined again. The doctor concluded it could have been produced by a deliberate blow against a blunt surface. It had not broken the skin, and its location was convenient for display. Brooks's wallet, supposedly stolen, was found beneath the spare tire of his car. The attack at the station had been staged. Kramer stared at the false ledger, as if it had personally insulted him. Then why hide at an inn? He asked. To support the appearance of flight, Wolfe said. Brooks required the police to find him frightened, injured, and surrounded by evidence of a plan arranged by another. Kent leaned forward. Then you believe me? I believe that your crimes are not the crimes under present discussion. Kent settled back, which was as close to relief as a lawyer permits himself. Kramer remained standing. What about the toast? He demanded. Brooks carried the glass, but Kent handled it too. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, tell Inspector Kramer what Miss Carter remembered this morning. Linda had telephoned at 8. She had recalled seeing Brooks enter the surface passage alone shortly before the toast. He told her he was looking for a telephone, though the nearest telephone was in the front hall. Brooks had been in the pantry corridor during the 5 minutes when Mercer's glass stood unattended, Wolfe said. Mr. Brooks applied the digitalis to the inner ridge of the glass and left a small amount on the base. He knew Mr. Kent would cross the service hall because he had directed him toward the washroom. Whether Kent wiped the glass by chance or prompting, the result was useful. The handkerchief acquired poison. So, Kent was framed at the same time Mercer was poisoned, I said. Yes. Kramer walked to the window and back. Brooks had the drink in his hand afterward, because tradition required him to present it, Wolfe replied. That tradition made the act appear innocent. It also gave him a reason to be seen with the glass, which he could later dismiss as ordinary. Kent said, Mercer invited Brooks to confront him. Wolfe shook his head. Mercer summoned him to decide whether he was guilty. The audit initially implicated Brooks. During their private conversation, Brooks produced the impossible transfer dated while both men were in Chicago. Mercer accepted it as proof that Brooks had been framed. Brooks created the impossible transfer himself, Saul said. Precisely. It was not an error in the false trail. It was his instrument for gaining Mercer's trust at the final moment. That was neat enough to be ugly. Brooks diverted company money through unfamiliar accounts. He arranged some transfers under his own authorization code and others with copied signatures. He created personal debts that made him appear desperate. He scheduled an escape to Chicago under another name. Then he planted evidence pointing toward Samuel Kent as the architect of the fraud. Why frame himself first? I asked. To control the accusation, Wolfe said. A man falsely accused can become indispensable to the victim if he supplies proof of the frame. Brooks required Mercer to suspect him, confront him privately, and then accept his innocence. Kramer said, Mercer discovered the fraud shortly before the party. Yes. Brooks knew the review was nearing completion. He needed Mercer dead before the bank records arrived the following morning. The toast was at 6:30, I said. The poison acted over several hours. Brooks expected Mercer to die after midnight, when the celebration had ended naturally, and Brooks was already aboard the Chicago train. But Mercer ended it early. Wolfe nodded. The poisoning caused weakness, nausea, and agitation. Mercer did not understand the symptoms, but he knew something was wrong. The forged message to Brooks, the financial confrontation, and the growing illness combined to make him suspicious. He dismissed the guests because he wished to isolate the danger. The early ending was unintended, Kramer said, and disastrous to Brooks's schedule. It made every departure conspicuous. Kent said Brooks left first because Mercer sent him to the station. Mercer believed the forged note could expose the person manipulating them. Brooks had written it himself. He therefore staged his departure, parked the car, created the bruise, and returned to the estate in another vehicle. Where did he get one? I asked. Saul answered. A delivery van belonging to Northridge Development had been parked near the station. Brooks held access to it through one of the shell companies. Tire marks matching the van were found near the side drive at Mercer House. He returned before 10:30, Wolfe said. He telephoned Mr. Kent and summoned him back, ensuring another witness would enter the estate secretly and be seen with suspicious documents. Kent's face became rigid. He used me. He had been using you for months. What happened after I left? Brooks waited until Mercer was weaker. He entered the study, probably through the conservatory. The damp earth and paper star marked his path. He removed the 3 audit files and the red partnership ledger. But the man at the station asked Brooks for the ledger, Kramer said. There was no other man? Brooks asked himself through a fictional assailant. His story emphasized the ledger because he wished us to believe someone else wanted it. I looked at Kent. Then what were the 3 folders Linda saw you carrying? Your own copies, Kent said bitterly. Yes, Wolfe replied. Their similarity allowed Brooks to rely upon confusion. Miss Carter truthfully saw Mr. Kent with 3 grey folders. She falsely assumed they were Mercer's hidden files. Kramer said, "Where are the real files?" Mr. Brooks removed them after Mr. Kent departed. "We shall find them when he is compelled to disclose their location." Compelled how? By depriving him of his final protection. Wolfe reached for his beer but did not drink. The missing documents contained the complete transaction trail. Brooks could destroy them, but not safely until he had confirmed whether Mercer retained copies elsewhere. The red ledger could reveal those copies. That is why both forged notes mentioned it. Kramer looked toward the hall. "Where is Brooks now?" "Still at Mercer House under guard," I said. "Then I'll arrest him." "No," Wolfe said. Kramer turned. "You possess a persuasive reconstruction," Wolfe continued. "But Mr. Brooks will deny entering the pantry, deny returning from the station, deny poisoning the glass, and claim Mr. Kent invented the telephone call. The physical evidence against him is incomplete. The van tracks? Useful, not decisive. The fibers circumstantial. The missing files? Still missing." Kramer's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "The gathering. Wolfe instructed me to summon Daniel Brooks, Linda Carter, Nora Bell, Andrew Mercer, Clara Wynne, Evelyn Ross, Samuel Kent, Martha Cole, and Elsie for 9 the following evening. Kramer and Pearlie would attend. Saul would bring the reconstructed bank records." "What are you telling Brooks?" I asked. "That the original audit files have been found." "They have not." "No, but he cannot be certain." Kent rose from the red chair. "Am I free to go?" Kramer gave him a look that could have stopped a train. "You are free to sit in the front room under guard." Kent accepted that as an improvement. After Kramer and Pearlie escorted him out, I turned to Wolfe. "The outline now fits. Mercer discovered the fraud. He summoned Brooks. Brooks poisoned the toast before their private discussion. Mercer became ill and ended the celebration. Brooks staged the station attack, returned secretly, and removed the files. Yes, the departures were not the plan. They were the damage caused when Mercer changed it." "Correct. Then why did Brooks remain at the inn instead of taking the train he had booked?" "Because the train was never an escape. It was evidence of an escape. Had he boarded it, he would have placed himself beyond control of the investigation. By remaining nearby, bruised and frightened, he could return as the falsely accused partner." I looked at the imitation ledger on the table. Months of preparation, indeed. He created debt, forged transfers, recruited Miss Kent's legal assistants, purchased poison through Kent's account, arranged the train, and planned a death that would appear natural. All ruined because Mercer felt sick too soon. No, Archie. Ruined because Mercer ended the party. That was the heart of it. Brooks had planned a quiet death after midnight, a smooth departure by train, and a trail pointing toward a corrupt attorney. Instead, Mercer dismissed the guests, sent Brooks to enact his own trap, and left each departure exposed to examination. The celebration ended early because Harold Mercer was already dying. The murder began months before because Daniel Brooks intended that no one should notice. Chapter 8. Wolfe explains the ending. At 8:55 the following evening, Wolfe's office contained nearly everyone who had attended Harold Mercer's final holiday celebration, but none of the holiday spirit. Daniel Brooks sat in the red leather chair. He had shaved, changed into a dark suit, and recovered enough of his confidence to look offended rather than frightened. That was an improvement in appearance, but not in judgment. Samuel Kent sat near the bookshelves under the supervision of Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins. Kent had admitted creating shell companies, preparing false debt agreements, removing his own documents from Mercer House, and fleeing police observation. He had not admitted murder, and for once I believed him. Linda Carter and Nora Bell sat side by side near my desk. Clara Wynne occupied the yellow chair. Evelyn Ross sat beside her. And Andrew Mercer stood near the fireplace with his hands in his pockets. Martha Cole and Elsie had been given chairs close to the door. Inspector Kramer stood behind Brooks, with an unlit cigar clamped between his teeth. Saul Panzer waited in the front room, with 2 folders and instructions to enter when I called. The imitation partnership ledger had been removed. In its place, 3 grey folders rested on Wolfe's desk. Brooks noticed them immediately. He tried not to stare, which meant he stared only when he thought Wolfe was looking elsewhere. At 9 precisely, Wolfe adjusted a sheet of paper in front of him and looked around the room. "Mr. Goodwin, are we ready? We have the cast, the police, and 3 folders that have made Mr. Brooks uncomfortable." Brooks turned toward me. "Those files are fraudulent." "You have not examined them," Wolfe said. "I know the original records are missing." "How?" Brooks hesitated. "Everyone knows." "No. Everyone knows that 3 financial folders were removed from Harold Mercer's study. No one but the person who removed them can know whether these are those folders." Brooks looked at Kramer. "This is another trick." Kramer removed the cigar. "Sit still and enjoy it." Wolfe leaned back. "We are here because Harold Mercer was poisoned during a holiday gathering at his country estate. The gathering was intended to continue until midnight. Instead, Mercer dismissed his guests at 8:20. Each person interpreted that abrupt ending according to his or her own concern. He looked at Clara Wynne. Mrs. Wynne believed her brother had quarreled, finally, with Daniel Brooks. Clara nodded. Miss Ross believed an important financial crisis had occurred. Evelyn Ross said, "That appeared obvious." Andrew Mercer believed his father had rejected both his son and his business partner. Andrew frowned but said nothing. Mr. Kent believed Mercer had decided to expose irregular financial transactions. Kent folded his hands. Miss Carter and Miss Bell knew Mercer was conducting a private audit. Inspector Kramer believed the person who left first had fled after committing murder. Kramer grunted. "I considered it. You embraced it." "I'm still listening." Wolfe looked at Brooks. "Mr. Brooks encouraged every interpretation." Brooks sat straighter. "I did what Mercer instructed. For part of the evening, yes. That is what made your design effective." Wolfe placed both hands on the arms of his chair. The police initially treated the gathering as the central event. Who argued with Mercer? Who entered the study? Who handled the water bottle? Who left early? Those were proper questions, but they began too late. "When should they have begun?" Andrew asked. "Months earlier." Wolfe nodded towards Saul. "I went to the front room and brought him in." Saul placed the first folder on the long table. Daniel Brooks had stolen money from the Mercer Brooks Investment Company for more than a year, Wolfe said. He concealed the theft through Hawthorne Consulting, Northridge Development, and several smaller companies. Payments were described as consulting fees, repairs, insurance adjustments, and property loans. Brooks said, "Mercer authorized those companies. He authorized their creation. You used them for theft." "You cannot prove that." Saul opened the folder. Inside were copied bank statements, authorization records, and signature comparisons. Wolfe continued. "Mr. Brooks understood that a simple theft would eventually be found. He therefore created a more elaborate defense. He arranged transfers carrying his own authorization code, then added transactions bearing copied signatures. He caused some stolen money to pay his personal creditors. He arranged false loans against his partnership shares." Kent said bitterly, "Using documents I prepared." "Yes." Mr. Brooks supplied instructions and signatures. "You accepted them without sufficient inquiry because the legal fees were generous." Kent's face tightened, but he could not reasonably object. "Mr. Brooks made himself appear desperate," Wolfe said. "His debts, his secret plan to leave the partnership, and his one-way reservation to Chicago would all suggest a man preparing flight." Brooks laughed once. "You are accusing me of framing myself. You framed yourself incompletely. That is a useful method. When the accusation came, you intended to prove that certain evidence against you was false. Having cleared yourself of one part, you expected Mercer and the police to regard the rest as equally false." Wolfe selected a transfer sheet. One transaction bore Mr. Brooks' signature on a date. when both partners were in Chicago. Mr. Brooks created that impossible transfer deliberately. He knew Mercer would discover it and accept it as proof that someone else was forging his name. Linda Carter looked at Brooks. That was why, Mr. Mercer changed his mind during your conversation. Yes, Wolfe said. Mercer entered the meeting believing Brooks had stolen from him. Brooks showed that at least one signature was impossible. Mercer began to believe his partner was the victim of a scheme. Brooks said, "That is speculation." "No," Miss Carter heard Mercer say. "You made the word worthless, Mr." Brooks later told the police that Mercer accepted the Chicago date as evidence of forgery. "The conclusion follows," Kramer said. "Get to the poison." Wolfe gave him a look. "I am getting to motive. Poison without motive is chemistry." Kramer put the cigar back in his mouth. Mr. Brooks knew Mercer's audit was nearly complete. Wolfe continued. The following morning, bank records would arrive, exposing the true movement of funds. Mercer had summoned Brooks, Samuel Kent, and others to the estate so he could test their explanations without announcing an investigation. The celebration was camouflage, Linda said. Precisely. But Mr. Brooks knew that. He had learned the audit schedule weeks earlier. His old railroad reservation happened to fall on the same night because he had once planned to leave the partnership after the year-end review. Instead of cancelling it, he converted it into evidence of escape. Brooks's expression remained controlled, but one hand had tightened around the arm of the chair. Wolfe turned to Elsie. "Before the holiday toast, you carried Mercer's special crystal glass from the pantry." "Yes, sir. Mr. Kent stopped you and wiped the base." "Yes. Then Mr. Brooks took it from you and gave it to Mercer." "That was their custom every year," Linda added. Wolfe nodded. The custom was essential. Everyone would see Mr. Brooks hand Mercer the drink, but no one would regard the act as unusual. Mr. Brooks entered the pantry corridor during the 5 minutes when the glass stood unattended. He applied concentrated digitalis beneath the inner decorative ridge. The spiced punch concealed the taste. Brooks said, "Kent handled it." "Yes, because you directed him toward the washroom across from the pantry. When he noticed moisture on the base and wiped it, his handkerchief acquired traces of poison." Kent looked at Brooks with open hatred. "You intended me to be hanged for it." "No one is hanged in New York," I said. "But the intention lacked warmth," Wolfe continued. Mr. Kent had ordered the digitalis through North Ridge at Mr. Brooks's request. He had created the companies, prepared the false loans, and handled the poisoned glass. Every trail reached him, because Brooks arranged it, Kent said. "Yes." Brooks stood. "This is absurd. I will not remain here while a dishonest attorney excuses himself by blaming me." Pearlie moved between Brooks and the door. Kramer said, "Sit." Brooks looked at him, then at the 3 folders, and returned to the chair. Wolfe waited until he was settled. The digitalis did not kill Mercer immediately. That delay was part of the plan. Mr. Brooks expected Mercer to remain active until the gathering ended naturally. By midnight, most guests would be gone. Brooks's car would be at the station, and the reservation would suggest that he had fled after being exposed. "Yet I did not take the train," Brooks said. "No, because it was never an escape. It was part of the performance." Wolfe looked around the room. The poison began acting earlier than expected. Mercer became weak, nauseated, and uneasy. He checked the time repeatedly. Then the forged message appeared, directing Brooks to leave first and bring the old account book to the station. Andrew said, "Brooks wrote the message himself." "Yes, he placed it in his own overcoat before arriving." Brooks shook his head. "Mercer saw the note. Of course, you needed him to see it." Wolfe's voice sharpened. "During your private conversation, you first proved that one transfer bearing your signature was impossible. Then you showed Mercer a message suggesting an unknown person possessed proof of the fraud. You encouraged him to send you to the station. Mercer believed he was setting a trap. In fact, he was helping you create an alibi." The room was silent except for the office clock. Mercer returned to the drawing room troubled, Wolfe said. He was physically ill, uncertain whom to trust, and aware that someone had manipulated his accounts. He ended the celebration because he wanted the house cleared. That decision was not expected by the murderer. Linda said, "That is why everyone left in stages." Yes, Mercer announced the ending at 8:20, but the guests hesitated. They did not understand the danger. Then Mr. Brooks emerged from the morning room, appeared shaken, exchanged a staged threat with Mercer, and left. Clarowin said, "That was when I decided to go." Exactly, Mr. Brooks's departure became the signal. You and Miss Ross followed. Andrew Mercer abandoned his plan to stay overnight. Mr. Kent left after Mercer dismissed the legal conference. Wolfe turned to Kramer. The departures appeared to support Mr. Brooks's guilt because he went first. In reality, they injured his plan. He had expected a crowded house until midnight. Instead, the guests' movements became distinct and memorable. Kramer nodded reluctantly. Wolfe continued. Mr. Brooks drove to the railway station and parked his sedan. He put on a railway coat, created the appearance of an assault, hid his wallet beneath the spare tire, and left in a Northridge delivery van. The fibers in the coat matched his car, Saul said. He returned to Mercer House by service drive, Wolfe said. The damp earth near the conservatory and the gold paper star marked his entrance. Brooks said, "You have no witness who saw me." No, you relied heavily on unwitnessed spaces. The station platform, the service drive, the conservatory, and Mercer's study. Wolfe indicated Kent. Before returning himself, Brooks telephoned Mr. Kent and imitated Mercer's instruction to bring the partnership papers back to the estate. Mr. Kent arrived around 10:30, entered the study, and was seen carrying 3 grey folders. Linda Carter looked down. I believed they were the audit files. They were Kent's own copies. Brooks relied on that confusion. He needed a witness who could be accused of removing evidence. Kent said, "Mercer was alive when I saw him." Yes. Weak, sweating, and increasingly aware that he had been poisoned. He ordered you out because your presence confirmed his suspicion that the evening had been arranged. Wolfe turned toward Brooks again. After Mr. Kent departed, you entered through the conservatory. Mercer was still alive, but unable to resist. You took the 3 audit folders and the red partnership ledger from the hidden compartment. Brooks said nothing. You also moved the poisoned crystal glass to the study tray and poured mineral water into it, Wolfe continued. That made the water appear to be the source of the poison. You hoped the bottle would be blamed and the earlier toast forgotten. Kramer removed the cigar. That explains the misleading laboratory result. The water contained poison only because the glass still held dried residue. Martha Cole said, "The glass should never have been reused." True, Wolfe said, but murderers often employ ordinary habits. He touched the folders on his desk. Mr. Brooks then removed Mercer's audit records. Yet he could not immediately destroy them. Why not? Evelyn Ross asked. Because Mercer had spoken of copies. Brooks did not know whether a duplicate set existed at the city office, the bank, or with Linda Carter. He needed to examine the files fully and determine what else had been preserved. Brooks looked at the 3 grey folders again. Wolfe saw it. "These are not the originals," he said. Brooks exhaled. "You admitted that when you entered. No innocent man could distinguish them without opening them." "I knew you were lying," Brooks replied. "You suspected it, but suspicion is not the same as certainty." Wolfe nodded to Saul. Saul opened the second folder he had brought. Inside was a map, a property inventory, and photographs of an abandoned Northridge storage building. Yesterday, Wolfe said, Saul searched a warehouse rented by Northridge Development. In a locked metal cabinet, he found ash from recently burned paper, fragments of grey folder covers, and the brass binding mechanism from Mercer's red partnership ledger. Brooks's face changed. Kramer stepped closer. Wolfe said, "Not all the papers burned. Several sheets had slipped behind the cabinet." Saul removed 3 scorched pages and placed them on the desk. They carried transfer numbers and Daniel Brooks's handwritten initials. Brooks stared at them. "You had no right to enter that building." The words left him before caution could stop them. Kramer said, "That is twice tonight you have known too much." Brooks looked toward the door. Pearlie remained in front of it. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. "The surviving pages prove that you personally approved transfers into Hawthorne Consulting and Northridge. The bank records trace the money from those companies to accounts controlled through nominees. One of those nominees has identified you." Saul supplied the final piece. A retired accountant named Walter Price had opened 2 accounts for Brooks in exchange for cash payments. Price had signed a statement that afternoon after being shown the surviving transfer numbers. Brooks's hand released the chair arm. For several seconds no one spoke. Then he said, "Harold would have destroyed me." Wolfe regarded him without triumph. "You had stolen from him. I built that company as much as he did. He kept control of every account, every vote, every property. When I needed money, he treated me like an employee asking for an advance. So you took it." "At first I borrowed it," Kramer said. $2 million? Brooks looked at the floor. "The first transfers were small. I meant to replace them. Then the manufacturing venture failed. Kent created the companies, and I saw how easily money could be moved. Harold never noticed." "Until he did," Wolfe said. Brooks nodded. "When Linda began comparing the authorization records, I knew the audit would reach me. I arranged the false debts and the Chicago ticket because I needed another explanation. Kent had signed enough documents to look guilty." "And the poison?" Kramer asked. Brooks's face became gray. "I put it in the glass." Linda Carter closed her eyes. Brooks continued, the words coming more quickly. "I knew I would hand him the drink. I knew Kent would pass through the service hall. I told him the washroom was there. When I saw him wipe the glass, I thought it was perfect." "You wrote the message ordering yourself to the station," Wolfe said. "Yes, you staged the assault. Yes, you returned and removed the files." Brooks looked at Kramer. Mercer was already dying. "I did not touch him. You poisoned him," Kramer replied. "That counts. I only took the papers. And moved the glass. Yes. Where are the original files? Burned at the Northridge warehouse. The ledger? Burned with them." Kramer took handcuffs. Brooks rose slowly. His face had lost all expression. Before Pearlie led him away, Brooks looked at Wolfe. If Mercer had not ended the gathering early, it would have worked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "No, it would merely have taken us longer." Kramer fastened the cuffs. The room emptied gradually after Brooks was taken into custody. Samuel Kent left under police supervision and with the understanding that financial fraud, obstruction, and evidence removal remained unfriendly topics. Linda Carter agreed to assist Saul in reconstructing Mercer's accounts. Nora Bell went with her. Clara Wynne and Evelyn Ross departed together, as they had from the celebration. Andrew Mercer remained long enough to ask Wesk whether he would inherit control of the company. Wolfe told him that probate was not a branch of detection and dismissed him. Martha Cole and Elsie left last. Fritz showed them out and returned to ask whether Wolfe required food. Wolfe required beer first. When the office was quiet, I collected the glasses and returned the fake audit folders to my desk. "The files fooled Brooks," I said. "They disturbed him. His own knowledge betrayed him." I sat down. "What first caught your attention?" "The celebration ended too soon. Mercer was poisoned. Feeling sick made him send everyone home." "Partly. But Mr. Brooks's design required ordinary movement, confused memories, and an unremarkable departure. Mercer's decision separated every act. Brooks left first. Mrs. Wynne and Miss Ross followed because of his behavior. Andrew abandoned his overnight stay. Kent departed and returned. Each ending became visible. You said criminals plan beginnings and neglect endings. They must begin crime themselves. The ending depends upon other people, clocks, bodies, weather, and chance. Those are unruly collaborators." I looked at the dark windows. West 35th Street was quiet, though somewhere a horn objected to traffic. The celebration ended too soon, I said. Wolfe lifted his glass. Criminals spend so much time arranging beginnings that they forget endings leave the clearest trail. That deserved an answer, but none improved it. The holiday gathering had lasted less than 2 hours. The murder behind it had been prepared for months. In the end, Harold Mercer's final decision exposed the man who had planned everything except the ending.